Welcome back. It's time for today's comedian. He comes from Milford, New Hampshire. Put your hands together for Greg Boggis.
Hey, Arlington, very, very excited to be here at the Steve Katzo Show. Another round of applause for the band. How about that, huh? I'm so excited to be here in Arlington where dreams are made. I made the big trip down from New Hampshire. Yeah, in my car, I got an AMC Pacer with a shotgun rack in the back, New Hampshire guy that I am. And a little road rage incident down here in Massachusetts. Anybody with a road rage in the house? I see some of you familiar. Absolutely. I used to have road rage back when I was a young, fit guy, and, things would get a little dicey. I could get out of the car and run. Now that I'm an old, fat guy, amazing how my temper's in check, you know what I mean? When I got a buddy from Boston, I still visit him, Ernie Tossi, great guy, but he's got the road rage, something fierce. I get in the car with him, the veins bulging out of his head, the sweat's pouring off his brow, he's whacking me in the arm. I was like, Greg, look in the rearview mirror. This guy is 2 feet from my rear end. If this guy was any closer, you could examine my colon. Look at him. Like, listen, calm down. We're at the Dunkin' Donuts drive-thru, pal. Have a cappuccino. That should take the edge off. So what else? I've been traveling around trying to get back into shape for the summer. Well, now that the summer's over, I guess next year. But I went to the doctors, got the big checkup, gave me the good news, told them my anorexia is in remission. So, you didn't really need to laugh that much, folks. They tell me, Greg, wear black, it's slimming. Look at me, it's pretty much still fatting, isn't it? So I've tried all the different things you can imagine. I tried the Stairmaster, tried the Dealer Meal, tried the aerobic step exercise. I use that to exercise for about a week. I don't use it for exercise, and I use it to get the Twinkies on top of the fridge. It's a nice... The diet pills, if you have used the diet pills, it's not exactly the most effective weight loss method. Especially if you're like me, I have a tough time swallowing pills, so if you get creative, disguise their flavor. I found wrapping them in bacon was helpful. Put them on Sundays like Jimmy's, and has actually once tried to suck one to a cream horn. Sorry for the visual for you folks in Romania.
And that was our new friend, Greg. And hello, everybody. Welcome to Carnivore Personnel Sideshow. I'm Jacques.
This is Biff.
And without further ado, Greg, why don't you introduce yourself to the four people at home?
Yeah, so I'm Greg Boggis. I'm a New Hampshire-based stand-up comic. And I've been in the business for quite a few years here. Started when I was living in Somerville, Mass. And Boston was still kind of one of the epicenters of stand-up comedy. Not that it doesn't still produce a lot of comics, but the scene has become significantly more dispersed throughout the country and the planet due to the internet's thing.
It's first of all, it's 1 degree of separation. You're from Somerville, Mass. My buddy, who's my comedy writing partner and longtime friend of Biff, who started the podcast with me, he's also from Somerville. So there must be something in the water in Somerville that makes you people funny. And so Somerville, is that where you grew up? Was that home growing up?
No, I'm a New Hampshire boy. So I grew up in Nashua.
Oh, Nashua. Okay.
And then Milford.
And then, so it's funny that you say Boston used to be a hub because it, Greg and I talked like late last week. Greg and I have become on a collision course because, as I've been telling, Biff and the listeners, I've been talking with the fine folks over at Mill Number 5, trying to come up with some new events and different entertainment aspects to ongoing events that they have coming out of the pandemic, and how to, not just get back to 2019 levels of patronage over there, but how they can up their game and with new rooms. And one of the things I wanted to do was maybe start an open mic, a stand-up open mic, because there aren't a lot out there. And that's when I was like, oh well, before you do anything in comedy space, I want you to talk with Greg. And Greg and I had a very I called Greg anticipating having a 5-10 minute introductory phone call. I think it was about an hour and 20 minutes. And then, Greg and I we got to get back. So I want to talk all about what you do at Mill Number 5 and stuff. I also want to, because it's funny, you say it used to be the epicenter of comedy. It's so funny how many comics still come from Boston, comedy writers, when you see like, Saturday Night Live, where you see Seth Meyers, I think half of his writing staff, like Seth Meyers is, from New Hampshire as well, but half his writing staff is from New England. But still to this day, so many comics shoot their specials in Boston.
Yeah.
And one of the few things that I've done coming out of COVID, my wife and I went to see John Mulaney a few weeks ago because he has a new routine coming out of rehab. He did like 11 nights, like 21 shows over 11 nights. My wife saw 3 of them. And then just 2 weeks ago, Pat Oswalt kicked off his new tour. And what was great about that, Greg, I loved it. I loved it that he came out with a pad of paper and he's like, yeah, this is my first night on tour. I'm going to half apologize, but you're going to have to get used to me looking down and checking my notes. And it's like people, because basically if it's funny here, if you can get a Boston crowd behind you, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine.
Yeah. It's a very good breeding ground. It tends to have, I don't know, some of the Northeastern sensibility, which is kind of like, I don't know, prove yourself or whatever, make me laugh kind of a thing. But also, there's also a lot of good, like ball busting kind of, day-to-day life, and it's a very good place to learn. There's lots of, like you said, lots of great performers have come out of here over the years, and it's still a good place. There's lots of colleges, there's lots of clubs and things like that. And it's also got a big population center. So you can get, if you start working, you can work, Boston one night, Portland another night, Manchester another night, Springfield another night. There's all these big population centers, right? As opposed to, Montana, where you're doing, one gig and then driving 14 hours to the next gig and
right.
Showing up like you've made it through the Donner Pass,
It's funny because you hit on an interesting point. You get really smart comics coming through here, like the John Mulaney's and Pat Oswalt, very cerebral. Pat Oswalt will hit you with some really.
Is that what's wrong with you, Jacques? That I'm sorry.
But on the other hand, but on the other hand, you still got, like you said, the smart ass, quick one-liner. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's funny because Biff and I play hockey. We grew up in locker rooms and stuff, and it's dude, if you can't give it as good as you get, you know what I mean? You're going to get eaten alive. And it's funny because there's a couple other guys who know Boston and know that we grew up here speaking sarcasm, and
right.
And it's funny because we have this really good friend, his name is Paul, the blind squirrel. That's his nickname, a self-imposed nickname. Like, one day he had a great goal and he goes, yeah, even a blind squirrel will find a nut now and then. But it's funny when somebody will give somebody like me or Biff or some of our other friends shit. And you can just see, it's like, oh, you don't know what you just opened up. Oh, you poor son of a bitch. It's like you're about to be having a toe tag on you. You just brought a knife to a gunfight. But so
welcome to the Thunderdome.
So Greg, why don't you give us the elevator pitch / first 2 paragraphs of your Wikipedia page or your obituary to be someday. Why don't you give us your life in comedy?
Yeah, so we started in the early 90s, and I pretty quickly did well. I was a little bit older. I was like 28 or 27, 28. So a little bit older, so I wasn't quite a young, stupid punk. And I was just like quitting drinking for the second time. So I was aware of what was going on and wasn't blacking out or anything like that. So, and kind of like that was that after the big boom and kind of the dip, and then, and so, there was still a lot of the guys that I grew up watching, the Don Gavins, the Steve Sweeneys, in the Boston area. And then there was all these newer guys that were already kind of, pushing out into LA. I think Bob Marley had gone out to LA, Sue Costello, Patrice O'Neill, I think, went to New York, Bill Burr, Robert Kelly, a bunch of those comics. Janine Garofalo, Louis C.K. were already kind of moving out of Boston into, and becoming like the next round of legendary comics out of Boston. And so kind of I had watched them go, and I became, I was on the rubber chicken circuit, working for Dick Doherty at Barnstormers in Portsmouth and all that. And then and so I was developing pretty good because Dick Doherty had a ton of room, so you'd work for him and you'd get a Friday, Saturday, like 3 weekends out of the month, so you got plenty of work. And then early on, I had a buddy who was a comic in New Hampshire who went on to do a Mitt Romney. He looked like Mitt Romney, and he played Mitt Romney in a commercial for Rick Santorum during the primaries of I can't remember what year it was. It must have been like 2008 or something like that, where he was getting shot at by he was shooting people with like an AK-47. It was a really weird commercial. But anyways, this guy recommended me to a modeling agency, and I started to do modeling in commercials. And so like early on, like the first commercial audition I went to was to be the life of the party. I was supposed to be photocopying my ass on the photocopier. It was a company called Conway Office Products, and I literally went in and nailed the audition. So the first commercial I ever auditioned for, I got, and then kind of had a really good streak of like billboards and newspapers and things like that. And then I kind of moved around the comedy scene, and then later on in my career I started to do some booking, and that's when I stumbled upon Mill Number 5 in Lowell. And there's this theater called the Luna Theater at the end of Mill Number 5, which is this, it's for the uninitiated, or you don't know anything about Lowell and New England. New England had some of the largest mill complexes from the 1800s. Huge, massive brick mill complexes. And of
Gorgeous
course,
buildings.
Yeah, they're gorgeous buildings. And then, when the whole, industrial revolution moved on from New England, and, as the term is going south, a lot of that industry went to the south. You had all of these old buildings that were sitting around. Manchester had them, Providence, all these places had these really big complexes. And it wasn't for years and years and years until they started like, oh man, these are gorgeous buildings that'll last 1,000 years. We can just retrofit them into, additional or new industry or housing, or in the case of Mill Number 5, this cool pedestrian mall on the 4th floor with coffee houses and apothecaries and photo studios and yoga studios. And at the very end is this gorgeous Mill Number 5, and it's like a 90-seat theater, the Luna Theater, 90-seat theater, and they kind of do a lot of they do some first run movies. They do a lot of old classic movies, comedy, horror. This month, of course, they'll be loaded up with the horror and all that. And then I pitched them to do comedy on a Monday night. And so one month, a night pre-COVID pandemic, I was doing a Mondo Monday comedy at 7:30, and it was a short show, like an hour and 20 minutes. And of course, it was a Monday night, so every comic was available. So you'd be able to, I pitched him on a door deal, and so I'd be able to get comics for a premium, because it's a Monday night. Nobody gets paid work on a Monday night, so you do a short set on a Monday night, and it was just great for I think 3 or 4 years. And then the pandemic was that giant sucking sound that
Bummer.
blew it all up.
But you're bringing that back starting this month, yes?
I'm bringing it back at the end of the month, starting the end of the month. I believe it's the last Thursday of the month. I don't have my book open right now, but I think it's the 30th. Either
28th.
28th. Okay, all right.
Yeah. So this podcast will drop on the 18th. So that, and we'll talk about it the next podcast. That's fantastic. That's great. I'm the fun thing about New England is a lot of the comedy stores are gone. There used to be a lot in Boston, but there's a lot of comedy nights. My sister, is a coordinator with Girl Scouts, and there's always a fundraiser somewhere in the New England area, on a Thursday or a Friday or a Saturday, and you'll see 2 or 3 just I mean, as good as you're going to see on Netflix, like comics out there, at these nights, it's, I don't know if the rest of the country has things like Knights of Columbus and Elks Lodges still around and stuff, or, Water Buffalo Lodges somewhere. But yeah, no, you'll see flyers all around, and, pre-pandemic, you can catch like great local shows. So it's great that Mondo Monday is coming. Do you find So here's an interesting question, taking a step back. When you've gone
Yeah.
from I'm a comedian, I'm trying to get booked, I'm trying to get stage time, to I'm a comedian, I'm also going to host shows and I'm going to book comics. Did you find out that comics suck to deal with sometimes, or was it fun? Because I mean, like being in a band, trying to get gigs in like the early 90s and stuff like that, well, it was always a laborious task. And then when I started booking bands, I'm like, oh, this is why bookers are such dicks to us, because we're assholes.
Sure.
And we show up late, and we we cause
Shitty
problems.
excuses. Yeah,
Right.
I thought it was Tuesday night. Yeah, and and the crowd didn't like me opening with the Mother Teresa's getting an abortion joke. I mean, what's wrong with these people?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So the
Well,
good thing
because
about
we can't imagine Mother Teresa having sex. That's where the problem.
Well, Greg, how do you get Mother Teresa pregnant?
dress her like an altar boy.
Thank you, ladies and
I'll be
gentlemen.
here all week. There was a comic who used to have a great Mother Teresa bit, and he didn't know he was on his way up to northern Maine, I think Caribou, and on the road. This was pre-internet days, right? Mother Teresa died, and so he's going into this whole Mother Teresa bit.
Too soon,
yeah.
And the crowd, and it was usually like a killer bit, and of course it's flatlining. He's like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Mother Teresa died tonight." Oh, so
want to get away?
So you being at a Monday night, I was able to book most of my friends and things like that. So people that I knew were reliable, and people that were would come and do a good job and be happy to do like I said, a short paid show on a
Did you ever have to fill in though for a flake? Like, say, oh my God, I need somebody in this slot. I guess I'm gonna have to just step in. You ever have to do that?
I would always host the show.
Oh, okay.
So So if there was ever any, like, somebody didn't show up, and I think everybody showed up that I booked.
Okay.
So
good.
I never had to I've got to go do an extra 10 minutes or something like that. And a lot of times, like if something like that happens, I'd either I would do extra time, or the headliner says, if you want to go long, feel free. A lot of times I'll tell them, do 25 minutes, but if you're having fun, do 35. And most comics are total whores, so they will do the extra time, right? As long as the crowd's good, right?
And because it's a Monday night and not at a traditional comic venue, do comics also see this as, hey, I'm kind of working out a bit, hey, this might be rough? Or are they coming with their A-list stuff? And I don't mean this in a derogatory way. Are they coming with their A-list stuff, where they come and it's like, hey, this is a Monday night at an offbeat place, I'm kind of working, because there's one thing to rehearse it in your living room in front of the cats, and it's another thing to get audience feedback.
Well, I would like if somebody wanted to come and work out something, I would do that. So there was a ton of comics that would come and do guest spots, like, I don't know if you know Justin McKinney, but Justin McKinney would, sometimes come by and do like a guest spot because he's working on something. And, somebody like that wants to do a little bit of stage time in your room. Why wouldn't you give it to him,
Right. And tell me a little bit about the crowds over there that you've gotten in the past and that we're hoping, will be coming back post-pandemic.
I mean, Lowell's a pretty diverse American city. It was literally, like I said, one of those, crushed out mill towns that has, it's still got, a percentage of rough clientele. I think it's literally like a Mission, right around the corner, and people who are on, tough times in their lives and all that, not exactly the most uplifting stuff in the world. And I'm not a guy that spends a lot of time busting the chops of people whose lives aren't in great shape, but it's also, it's got UMass Lowell, and it's got a ton of industry, and it's got a pretty diverse ethnic core. And so you have a nice variety of restaurants and things like that. And so it's kind of a fun place. And it's always, to me, it's always kind of a fun crowd, that's always, I'm the regular guy, so they like me, in theory, right? They come to my shows and they laugh and all that. And so I get to do a little bit of workout, and I kind of get to, like, hey, it's me, I'm not necessarily going to do all the same jokes that you've heard before. I'm going to bounce, my new Halloween bits off you, because that's, different than my standard set. And let's mix it up here, and let's have a little bit of fun and they're always, it's just almost always a fun crowd, even when it's, sometimes it would be 25 to 30 people. Other times it'd be 60, 70, 80. And just a fun, cool, great workout room and an awesome, like an awesome Monday night. It's literally, it's such a bonus to have a paid Monday night gig.
But the new shows are going to be on Thursday. Is Monday? Or is it now Mondo Thursday?
I think it's just going to be Mondo comedy at the Luna Theater, and so it'll be Thursday. So I think it'll be a little bit higher of a cover, and probably and because of that, we'll make the show a little bit more of a standard length show, probably an hour and 20, an hour and 30 minutes. And yeah, I'm hoping to bring in a lot of the same performers that I had before, and then some new folks. There's some new comics that are basically headliners now that weren't a couple of years ago. And so it's always fun to bring in people and watch them light up a room.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. And is it all ages shows? Are the 18 plus, 21 plus?
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't think there's any age restriction. Some people have brought their kids in. You always find like there's somebody like, hey, this is my son Johnny, and he's 15 or whatever, 12, but we let him listen to whatever, Dave Chappelle or Lisa Lampanelli, and he loves comedy. And so don't change your act because I brought this whatever 12-year-old. And then the only thing that happens occasionally is that the people sitting around this whatever young kid will get a little bit dicey about it, and you like bust the kid's balls or something like that. You kind of bring him into the show like, yeah, his father brought him here. What kind of a sociopath is this guy? And so you kind of bring him into the show a little bit, and then people are like, oh, okay, it's not it's not ambush. It's not like what I was watching. It was a movie. I can't remember. It was one of the Argento zombie horror movies from like the 1980s, and like the opening scene is like these intestines coming out of the zombie's mouth, and somebody walks like like a 7-year-old kid down the aisle, and I just remember like everybody like started jeering, get out of here, and literally the person stopped, turned around, and ran out with the kid. I'm like, oh, that was positive, positive social. Peer pressure got that person to take their kid from being traumatized with this god awful zombie intestine puking movie.
It's funny because so when John Mulaney came to town and my wife saw him like 3 times, the last time she saw him, maybe 10 spots away, there was a kid 12, 13, 14, and John Mulaney got to one part of his show and he's like, okay, so I'm going to go in, and he started talking to the kid and mom and dad. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this bit. It's going to be a little dicey, but it's a cautionary tale of what not to do. I'm not going to make a joke out of it. We're going to laugh about it, but it's also, and he took a moment to, but then again, he's not really working blue. He was talking about like, a couple things, going through rehab. So when Greg and I talked the other day, I'll be honest, there was one of these things where, I don't know him. And, but this topic came up about and the cancel culture. And it was really nice. And I'm trying to think what sparked it, Greg. But when you made a comment that I've repeated back, it's like, yeah, if you're out there today, going up, doing a routine that would kill at a 1972 bachelor party, Right. So I said to this broad, it's like,
so no dice clay.
No, and we had so I love you, for a working comic to kind of talk about like how it's different doing comedy in 2021 versus 2010, 2015.
Yeah, first of all, I think there's a lot of whining. And a lot of the whinings come from people that are like, oh my God, I can't do what I used to do. And I'm like, first of all, in the world of comedy that I was in, there was always like, always have these gigs where, they want you to work clean tonight. It's a Knights of Columbus. Please don't do your noisy Jesus getting nailed on the cross bit because it's a bunch of Catholics and they will probably not laugh. And, or you're doing a Jewish temple. So maybe not do a joke that is gonna offend a temple crowd, and that was always like, it's a corporate show, and they don't want you talking about drugs. So all along from the very beginning, there were always these restrictions on shows that you're at. And it was like, usually if you did some kind of a private show or corporate show, there was these things where, they don't want you to talk about the CEO's, wife's tits. And they don't want you to talk about the competitive company, and they don't want you to, and that's, some people can like say, oh, they don't want me to do this, I'll do it, and then get away with it. But a lot of other people are like, okay, I guess I'll avoid that minefield and do my material and drop the fuck.
Right.
And so that so many people have like, somehow today, comedy today, you can't do the jokes, or everybody's so uptight. I'm like, for me, the only time I had people walk out of a crowd, I was in a coffee house probably 5 years ago, and one of the guys was making a joke about Jesus masturbating, and four Christian people who were upset about that joke got up and walked out and said that's not comedy. And so so it doesn't, it's the whole kind of either cancel culture or political correctness tends to come from a particular political spectrum, and a lot of it I just think is hypersensitivity about this college crowd, that whatever, say 20% of the kids are from another country, they don't want to hear me doing my shitty xenophobic Archie Bunker material. Oh, boo-hoo, work on it, find maybe you're too old to do a college now.
I found a lot of that. It's people usually don't have problems with routines where you're punching up. Those
Right.
aren't the routines that people are. It's the punching down. It's like, well, you know what? I used to be able to make fun of foreigners transitioning to a new country. Why can't I still do that?
It's so fresh.
Right. And I forget what joke we were talking about, but when you're like, yeah, if that flies at a 1972 bachelor party, you might want to rethink.
Right. And that's the thing is that just things change. And, like I always wondered, was there a point where the minstrel guys said, oh my God, I can't believe everybody's getting so tight about a minstrel show.
Right.
I mean, we used to do it all the time. We've been doing it for years, and now nobody wants a minstrel act.
Well, and
like,
the bigger comics
and that's-
have to
and
do
that's-
that, right? I mean, hasn't it always been a thing where George Carlin, whose material is well known, but he had his Tonight Show material, right? I mean, it is something
Sure.
that probably comics. It seems like somewhere along the line, you want some degree of that flexibility, right?
Yeah, he didn't go on Johnny Carson and use the word cocksucker.
Right.
Right. So that there's always been these kind of areas and places where you would cater your material to the environment you're in. And like I said, if you're somebody that's a college act and you're going to do things that's going to just piss off college students as opposed to make them laugh, then maybe that part of your career is over, and now you can go on to doing the Knights of Columbus's and the Kiwanis gigs and all that, and there's nothing wrong with it. That's just change. That's life moving on. I'm not a big college guy because I'm a 55-year-old dude, and a lot of college kids, unless you got a really good pitch, they'd much rather see somebody in their cohort, and that's the way it is.
Interesting.
So you got into comedy a little late. You said 27, 28. What, who or what made you get up? Like, who were you watching where you're like, I can do that.
Well, so I grew up, I was born in 65, right? So 20 years after World War II ended. And then kind of like at the beginning of in the middle of kind of the 60s cultural movement and all that. So kind of like I was a kid of Sesame Street, the first episodes of Sesame Street, all the reruns of all the classic TV shows, the Three Stooges, Abbott and Costello. So I was really, you had all this great, and then when I'm 5 or 6 years old, the whole family would watch All in the Family, and then Bob Newhart, and then Sanford and Son, and the Carol Burnett Show. The Carol Burnett Show was probably the show that was like, oh my God, look at how magic this is to get in front of a crowd and perform and make them laugh. And so my, Red Fox, and Sanford and Son, Archie Bunker, All in the Family, laughing, and then Carol Burnett. And they were just like, oh God, that's great stuff. And then, a few years later, Carlin and Pryor and Steve Martin was like the guy that turned comedy into rock and roll. I remember sitting around, my family had just moved out to Milford from Nashua, and Steve Martin's, I think it was 1977, so I'm about 12, and his big first album dropped. And I remember there was probably 15, my mom, my dad, brothers and sisters, family, friends, put on the album, and we all sat and listened to both sides of the album, And, I'm 12 years old. So when Steve Martin said that cat was the best fuck I ever had, and I'm here with, family and friends, it was so funny. It was so crazy and so magic and so wonderful. And he was so, he just was such a good entertainer and a good performer. And watching how he did that was, it was like a maestro. He became the Get Ready Soul at the Hollywood Bowl for one of his shows. That was like, oh my gosh, this is quite the life, and so those were kind of all the foundational performers that Carl and I saw live once, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, of course, into the 80s and all that, and Saturday Night Live. So I was really, really steeped in all this kind of entertainment. I was the youngest of 6 kids, so I was the family mascot anyways, until people, I was kind of like a charming young guy. It was funny. It was funny. You become like the family mascot when you're the youngest of 6, and you meet all your brothers and sisters' older friends, and you're able to converse with adults, and people older than you, and you become, a performer, a dancing monkey. And I like that shit. And when I finally had the chance to do it, I had a buddy visit me. I was working as a security officer at Franklin Pierce College. And he's like, my girlfriend broke up with me and I got a room open in my apartment in Somerville. And I want to, fill it up with somebody. And I thought of you. So I'm like, well, if I don't start doing stand-up comedy, I'm going to regret not having tried. So I moved to Boston. I think it was 94, Somerville, and started doing stand-up. And, by the middle of 95, I was, getting paid gigs and working, regularly working, weekly. And then, in the next few years, started doing, like I said, doing commercials and, modeling and shit like that, and landed a couple of decent sized commercials. And, so it's, I'm a underachiever. So, I'm like a perpetual middler host and stuff like that. I don't ever want to have the pressure of being a headliner. It's just too much fucking work. It's like an hour. It's like an hour. You know what I mean?
That's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time. And I like myself for 25, 30 minutes tops.
And so over the pandemic, what did you do to keep the funny going?
Yeah, so I did a couple of Zoomy kind of things and some interviews and things like that, and then a bunch of outside shows. So there was, one of the agents had a bunch of like campgrounds. So literally one night it was this campground out by Hampton Beach, and everybody pulls up in their golf carts. And I said to the guy in the front row, just leave your lights on. Those will be the spotlights. And we just set up sound in this grassy field with about 65, 70 golf carts. And it was fucking great. It was, nobody was doing anything. And it was kind of like the whole freaky dystopia of the pandemic was kind of, settling upon us. I'm like, oh my God, is this going to be, like the Omega Man or I Am Legend? Is it going to be that bad, or we're going to have to start eating relatives, And then you started to do that, a little bit of normalcy. And when you would do those kind of shows, you felt good and people were appreciative of it. And so you had a handful of those outside shows and, like I said, clubs, resorts and things like that. And then, people started to get vaccinated and you started to do some, inside shows, and it's kind of, people are happy to come and laugh and remember what it was like, prior to whatever the hell that last year of the pandemic was.
When do you think it gets back to like full rooms and full? I mean, are we there now? Do you anticipate like the 28th of being, kind of back to normal, or is it going to be baby stepping into it, over like the next 2, 3, 4 months?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. I mean, New Hampshire was pretty close to getting back to, normal there. And it's got a pretty highly vaccinated population, and most of the venues I think are at full capacity. So it's it's semi-normal, but you still have to address, you still have to talk about the whole thing, and so it's still kind of weird. It's definitely this thing that I was looking back at it's a Richard Matheson book, I Am Legend. That there were three different versions of it. The first one was Vincent Price, 1954, and that was the Last Man on Earth. It was a creepy horror movie that I saw sometime in the late '60s, early '70s. And then there was the Omega Man with Charlton Heston, and same thing. And it was this creepy dude named Anthony Zerba was the bad guy, and it was just and then the Will Smith one, and it was all predicated on a pandemic. I'm like, oh my god, this movie that I remember watching in 1970 was about a pandemic wiping out everything. And and I just remember like one of the first nights when like the shit started to really happen. I went to like the Market Basket, and there was some dude with what those red gloves you used to do dishes, and like a blast shield, and I'm like, oh man, this is actually happening. This is like a bad nightmare. This is and you started like, oh my god, how creepy is it that I could touch some invisible stupid thing and rub my face, and then go meet my elderly parents and fucking kill them because I rub my nuts or whatever.
And when you do these shows, do you get young comics looking for guidance and advice? And what's some advice other than, don't get started, would you give young comics who kind of want to give this a go?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds kind of silly, but talk about yourself and be true to yourself, and that's tough if you're a young person. You're still just trying to find yourself, so a lot of it's kind of you're just kind of swinging in the dark, but part of me is like a Hippocratic oath there, do no harm, try not to be a fucking horrible person, and there's some comedy that's just kind of predicated on just being brutal to people, and I was never a big fan of that, and I just think that you can be edgy and you can be incisive and biting and stuff like that, but you don't need to be a dink.
The same thing, the punching up versus punching down.
Right.
How long did it take you to find your stage voice? Like if when you first started get up there, like not just feling comfortable, but actually like controlling the environment and kind of just being really comfortable in your own skin. Was that a natural transition or the 10,000 hours thing?
Yeah, it's kind of that. It's kind of a repetition thing where like the biggest thing is literally learning how to do bad and do it without losing your shit. You know what I mean? Like there are just times where it just is not going to work. And if you just become, pissy about it and lash out at the crowd, you're rolling a grenade into a show, and you're going to make it harder for the next person following you because you laid into everybody that, that isn't digging you. And you just learn how to do bad and do it with a modicum of dignity, and then get off the stage and hand it back to the next person. And that's like that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize, is that part of the business is not doing good. That's how you learn. You're like, oh shit, what did they do? And I remember like years ago, I was doing this gig with Dick Doherty up at the Comedy Zone in Burlington. And just as I was getting on the stage, some guy whispered something to me, like some kind of a shitty heckle, as I'm getting on the stage. And so my first thing out of my mouth was to the guy, "Fuck you." And just like the first thing this crowd of, like 70 or 120 people are seeing is me telling this dude to go fuck himself. And it was just like, it was like, taking a torch to the room. They didn't like me. They're like, who is this guy, just starting out the show like that. And so that's the kind of thing you learn how to what to not deal with. I know there was I can't remember, there was a story about it, somebody who had a throwaway line like, geez, you people are acting like I just killed your favorite teacher, and literally their favorite teacher had been killed. It was like a school thing, And so there's things that you can say. I can't remember the name. It was one of those fraternal groups, but they have like a kid in a I don't know, like a statue or something. I'm like, hey, who's the kid? And like everybody shut up. Oh, we don't talk about the statue. Oh, okay, okay. Nobody told me that.
Are there any statues over at the Lunar Theater at Mill Number 5? You got to give people a heads up about.
I think you should. No. I think you should put a statue there, and then just say, "Yeah, we don't talk." People ask, "Yeah, we don't talk about the statue."
Don't talk about the statue.
And how excited are you to be getting back up and in front of live audiences?
I like it, but it's like I still haven't quite. I don't know. I still haven't quite shifted gears, so it's like I've got molasses in my system, and it doesn't seem like it's really happening, and it's kind of. I'm kind of moving in slow motion, trying to get it all back again, But when I get in front of a crowd, I really have a good time. But it still doesn't quite seem real. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's not quite.
It's like one of those things. Like I always equate it to sports because I'm a Neanderthal and that's all. But it's like sometimes the game isn't real until you get that first hit. You know what I mean? You get checked, and that's like, and the same thing. It's not going to be real until it's real. You know what I mean? It's not real until it is.
But and you also make another good point where you talk about because you talked earlier about that outdoor gig, and obviously performing is performing. Maybe and I'm not a performer, so I don't know, but certainly this is not how it normally looks, right?
Right. Yeah.
I just went to a concert where the previous time I saw the band, the place was jam-packed, but the venue willfully reduced the capacity of the show. So it's like, hey, I'm in the pit, but it doesn't feel like a pit, And so,
right.
Yeah, so I'm sure that, and I don't know if that's how that translates to what you do, but certainly it's not 100% back to 2019, right?
It's definitely not. It definitely is still there's like I said, I mean, there's still the risk of this thing that can really lay people out. I mean, it's I believe it's an actual thing, and I had a relative who died from it, and a nephew that got he was like 21 years old, and he was like sick for months and months and months, and so it's to me it's a real thing because I've actually seen the negative consequences of it personally, and so it's something that I can't remember who made the phrase, but do not seek death, for death will find you. And part of that just seems like there's a lot of people like, I don't think I'm going to get it, so I'm not going to take the precautions. And that's like not wearing your seatbelt or driving real fast or
right.
Chain smoking a carton a day, man. Yeah, it may not happen to you, but it also may.
When I went to Patton Oswalt, I mean, I felt okay that, it's indoor Massachusetts and you have to wear a mask and that you had to show proof of vaccination. Now, sure, there might have been people with fake vaccination cards, but then I also did the math and I'm like, yeah, people who tend to pay money to go see Patton Oswalt probably are on the same side of the fence as me. They're not home doing quote unquote their own research on this. They're like,
yes, my own research.
No. So it is.
Did you see the woman who she got one of the forged cards and misspelled Moderna?
No, she didn't misspell the word Moderna. Yeah, she made these cards and she was selling cards with like the misspelling on it. It's like, maybe you should have done your own research on the spelling of this.
Wow. Actually, that NHL, has a National Hockey League has this vaccine policy for their players, and one of the players allegedly is being investigated for fabricating a fake vaccine card. Like he's like been in kind of on this suspension, so it's kind of everywhere.
It is just insane.
Yeah. And the thing is that I'm like, whatever. I'm a middle-aged dude now, and so like, if this whole concept of vaccinations is this conspiracy, well, for me, the conspiracy started in 1975 when I was 5 years old, and I was in a gymnasium in Nashua when Richard Nixon was president, and I got the person with and they used to have this fucking gun they would shoot you in the arm with that would drill holes, and so you'd have I don't know if you ever seen anybody, but they have the old it looks like the surface of the moon. It take this big divot out of your arm.
Yeah, no, I
John.
don't know, because Biff's a couple years older than me, and where the age breaks down. I was born in '69, so I have that. My sister was born in '68. We have that on our upper arm, lower shoulder. But my brother, you're talking the polio vaccination, yeah. And my brother, who was in '72, it was a liquid form by then. So I think it's 70 or 71. Yeah, you got that big pock mark, on the arm. Greg, how can people, where on the socials can people follow you?
So I'm on Twitter at Boggis News, Boggis, Boggis News. That I kind of just spend a lot of time busting political chops. I think my Instagram is also Boggis News, Boggis News, and that's a little bit more comedy promotion, and then like artsy fartsy stuff. I like taking pictures and things like that. And so that's that. And then I think that's it. I'm trying to think of any other.
Are you on Facebook?
I am on Facebook, yeah. But I think I might actually finally push the plunger on that.
Like the Thursday show coming up October 28th. Where do you get information on that?
So that will be probably on the website at the Luna Theater. So I think it's Luna Lowell, LUNA, lunalowell.com. And then I will post probably within a week the roster and the lineup of the performers on that show.
That is fantastic, Greg. I cannot say thank you enough. Hopefully you will come back on, and let us know how the shows go. And I will probably, I don't think Biff is going to be able to make the 28th.
It'll be a tough one, but if I have enough advance warning, you never know, I guess.
But I will definitely be coming out on the 28th for sure. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, I don't like to leave the house, but it's kind of hard not to go to your buddy's show when it's right down the fucking street.
Right there. Yeah.
I couldn't make it. This thing with this stuff happened.
Yeah,
it's a gorgeous building.
Yeah, I mean, you had me. We drove by there when I visited. Jacques, whatever on the drive, he kind of. We drove by and he kind of told me about the place. So it just seems like a really cool joint.
It's a very, very cool place. Like I said, the apothecary and you call Coffee and Cotton. It's a coffee house. And they make great grilled cheese sandwiches.
Nice, yeah.
And it's just a very, very cool area. And it's cool. Like I said, it's just great to see all that history repurposed into something new. And it's all usable as artist lofts, and I think the ground floor is like a charter school. So it's just a really cool multi-use place.
And it's growing. The guy over there just has a new room up on the 5th floor that I was at the other day, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And
really.
But it's great. But I'm excited to come to the Lunar on the 28th. We will talk about this, on the next couple of shows before then. But Greg, I can't say thank you enough. And our conversation the other day, it was just great, talking, because it's always a roll of the dice. Okay, here's a middle-aged white guy from New Hampshire. This could go. I'm either going to have a new comedy buddy, or I'm gonna have a one and done conversation with this guy. And it was great that you're not home doing your own research. I'll just leave it like that.
I like to pack my own shotgun shells.
Greg, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Thank you so much. Yep.
All right. I appreciate having me on. Thank you so much, and hope to talk to you soon.
All right.
Wow. That wasn't